Marcus had been working at the same company for over 6 years. He wasn't the kind of man people noticed right away. He didn't speak much during meetings, didn't hang out at lunch, and never joined office gossip. He just came in early, did his job with care, and left on time so he could pick up his son Elijah from school. Marcus was a single father, and Elijah was his whole world. He lived a quiet, careful life, one that didn't leave space for mistakes or risks. But on this particular night, everything would change. It was the company's annual party, something Marcus usually skipped, but this year his supervisor insisted he come. Said it was important. For his image, you always keep your head down, the supervisor told him. It's time people see you're part of the team. Marcus didn't drink, didn't like loud music, and didn't own fancy clothes, but he put on his cleanest shirt, left Elijah with his neighbor, and went. The party was being held in a hotel ballroom downtown. Laughter echoed through the high ceilings. Waiters walked around with glasses of champagne. And the music was too loud for talking. Marcus kept to himself, sipping juice, smiling politely, waiting for the hours to pass. Then he saw his boss, Mr. Langston, stumbling near the bar. Mr. Langston was a wealthy man, powerful in the company. But tonight he looked different. His face was red, his tie hung loose, and he was clearly drunk. A few coworkers giggled, watching him wobble, but no one helped. Marcus hesitated, then walked over. "Sir, maybe you should sit down," he said quietly. Mr. Langston squinted, then pointed a shaky finger at Marcus. "You're the car guy," he slurred. "Drive me home, Will." "Yeah." Marcus paused. He had planned to leave early, get home to Elijah, maybe heat some soup, but Mr. Langston looked like he could barely stand. Saying no might offend him, and Marcus couldn't afford to lose this job. So he nodded, took the keys, and led his boss out to the parking lot. The ride was mostly silent, except for Mr. Langston, humming an old song and occasionally mumbling about how nobody respected him. Marcus kept his eyes on the road, answering only when needed. He didn't like this situation, but he told himself it would be over soon. The house was huge, sitting behind tall gates. With lights glowing softly in the windows, Marcus helped Mr. Langston out of the car, supported his weight, and walked him to the front door. "I'll be fine from here," Mr. Langston muttered. Reaching for his keys, Marcus waited until he saw the porch light turn on and the door swing open slightly. He caught a glimpse of someone inside a woman, maybe? But she turned away before he could see her face, satisfied that his boss had made it. Marcus turned and walked back to his car. He didn't know it then, but that small moment, that one decision, was going to flip his entire life upside down. Driving home, Marcus thought about Elijah and hoped he was already asleep. He felt tired but proud that he'd done something good, something decent. Helping someone drunk get home safely was the right thing, wasn't it? He didn't think it would matter much, didn't think anyone would even remember. But life has a way of turning quiet nights into storms, and when Marcus opened his eyes the next morning, everything had already begun to shift. The phone rang early. He reached for it, still half asleep. "Mr. Marcus Hayes." The voice asked, "This is Officer Jensen from the City Police Department." Marcus sat up, his stomach tight. "Yes. I understand you drove Mr. Langston home last night," the officer said. Yes. I did," Marcus replied slowly. "Why?" There was a pause, a silence that made the air feel heavier. "He was found unconscious outside his home this morning," the officer said, "on the front lawn, in freezing weather." Marcus blinked, confused. "No, that's not right," he said. "I dropped him at the door. I saw someone open it." "Well, sir, there's no sign of anyone else, and Mr. Langston hasn't regained full consciousness yet." The call ended shortly after, but the damage was done. Marcus stared at the phone, the words replaying over and over in his mind. How could this be happening? He did everything right. He helped, he was careful, he saw the light come on. He even saw someone at the door, didn't he? He rubbed his eyes, trying to remember every detail. The picture in his mind was already fading. Something didn't feel right. Something was off. But at that moment, Marcus didn't know that this simple ride home would become a storm that tested his name, his job, and even his ability to protect his son. What he thought was just a quiet act of kindness was about to be twisted into something dark and dangerous. And all he could do was hold on, because the truth had just started to hide, and he had no idea how deep it would go. Marcus didn't sleep well that night, even after the phone call ended. His heart wouldn't slow down. He kept turning in bed, trying to understand what had just happened. How could Mr. Langston end up outside in the cold when Marcus clearly saw? Someone opened the door. He kept telling himself it must be a mistake. Maybe someone moved him after Marcus left. Maybe Mr. Langston wandered back out on his own. But deep down, something felt wrong. Something didn't make sense. By morning, Marcus had bags under his eyes and a tight feeling in his chest. He got Elijah ready for school like always, tying his shoelaces while the boy hummed quietly to himself, unaware of the storm building around his father. As Marcus walked him to the gate, Elijah looked up and said, "Daddy, you okay? You look worried." Marcus forced a smile, kissed his son's forehead, and said, "I'm just tired, buddy. That's all." He didn't want to scare him. Didn't want him to feel the pressure he was feeling when Marcus arrived at work. The energy felt different. People weren't smiling. The usual morning chatter had gone quiet, and eyes followed him down the hallway. He tried to ignore it, pretending everything was normal, but he could feel the weight of judgment pressing into his back. He barely sat at his desk when he got the message. HR wanted to see him immediately. He walked to the office with his heart pounding louder than his footsteps. Inside, two people waited, both serious-faced, one from Human Resources and the other from Legal. They didn't ask him how he was, didn't offer coffee, or even a seat. At first, they simply told him that he was being placed on temporary leave until further notice. Marcus was stunned. "Wait, what? Why?" "I didn't do anything wrong," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. The HR officer looked uncomfortable, like she didn't want to be the one talking. "We're not accusing you of anything at this time, Marcus," she said carefully. "But until the police finish their questioning and the company understands more about what happened, we have to take precautionary steps." "I drove him home," Marcus said again, slower this time. "I dropped him off. I watched the door open. I saw someone there." The legal guy leaned forward, his voice more sharp, more distant. "There's no camera footage," he said. "The security system at Mr. Langston's home is currently down, and there are no witnesses who saw what you claim." "No witnesses," Marcus repeated, his voice rising. "There was someone at the door, I swear. I didn't just leave him out there." But the room was already silent. The kind of silence that means decisions were made before you arrived. They told him he could go home, that they'd contact him later. No timeline, no promise. Just polite distance and eyes that wouldn't meet his. Marcus left the building with a heavy heart, walking slower than usual. His hands trembled slightly as he started his car. He kept replaying the night over and over again in his head, searching for some mistake, some detail he missed. He had helped someone, saved them from driving drunk, and now it was being twisted into suspicion. He got home, sat on the couch, and stared at the wall for a long time. It wasn't just about the job, though. He needed it badly. It was about his name, his truth, his son. If things went wrong, if people believed he abandoned a drunk man outside in freezing cold, it could affect everything. He could lose more than just income. That night, he didn't tell Elijah about work. He smiled through dinner, helped him with homework, and listened to him talk about school like everything was okay. But Marcus's mind wasn't in the room. It was stuck on that front porch. On the moment he turned around after seeing the light come on, he remembered the shape of someone standing. Behind the door, the edge of a red heel, the quick movement like they didn't want to be seen. It wasn't just his imagination. He was sure of it. Later that evening, he checked the news, and sure enough, the company's name was already trending. Few online articles said an unnamed employee might be involved in an incident regarding the company's CEO. Marcus didn't need to guess who they were talking about. He shut off the screen, leaned his head back, and closed his eyes. He had done the right thing. So why did it feel like the world was turning against him? Then came the text. Late at night, it was from a coworker he barely spoke to, but who had always been polite to him. It said only 6 words, but they struck like lightning. Don't trust anyone, Marcus. Stay alert. He stared at the message, confused and tense. What did it mean? Who sent it really? And what did they know? Marcus looked toward Elijah's bedroom door, hearing his soft breathing from inside. He had to protect that boy, no matter what. And now he knew. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. Someone was hiding something, and it was time to find out what. Marcus woke up the next morning with the same heaviness in his chest. It wasn't just worry anymore. It was the sharp, growing feeling of being watched, judged, and slowly pushed into something he didn't understand. He sat at the edge of his bed, rubbing his hands together, staring at the phone on the table. No new calls from the company, no word from Mr. Langston. Nothing but silence, but the text from last night still sat there on the screen. 6 words repeating like an echo in his head. Don't trust anyone, Marcus. Stay alert. He didn't know who sent it, but it had shaken him. He knew now that this wasn't going to go away on its own. He tried to stay focused on the morning routine, making breakfast, packing Elijah's lunch, helping him zip up his jacket, but even Elijah could sense something was wrong. Daddy, he said softly at the door. Did something bad happen at work? Marcus paused, crouched down, and looked into his son's eyes. Nothing you need to worry about, champ, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I just have a few days off. Elijah nodded, trusting him without question, and ran off to join his friends. Marcus stood there for a moment longer, watching his son disappear around the corner. Then he turned and got into his car, not to go to work, but back to Mr. Langston's house. The gate was closed when he arrived, but Marcus stayed in his car and stared at the house beyond it. It was the same large mansion he had seen 2 nights ago. Cold and quiet from the outside, he rolled down his window and looked at the intercom. Part of him told him to leave, to let this go, but the other part, the one that protected his name and his child, told him to push forward. He pressed the button. After a long pause, a woman's voice answered, calm and distant. Yes. I'm Marcus Hayes, he said slowly. I was the one who drove Mr. Langston home from the party. Silence followed, and for a second he thought the line had gone dead. Then the voice returned. You need to speak to the family attorney. Not us. The gate remained closed. Please, Marcus said. I just need to ask about the security footage. Something's not right. There's no footage. The voice replied coldly. The system was under maintenance. Goodbye. The line cut off. The gate never opened, and Marcus sat there, staring at the thick metal bars. No footage. That made no sense. A man as wealthy and paranoid as Mr. Langston wouldn't leave his security system down. Not for a day, not for an hour. Marcus drove off, but not home. He parked in a quiet lot, pulled out his phone, and called a friend from his old neighborhood. Terrence used to work in home installations and now ran a small security company. After a short call, they met at a diner, 2 cups of black coffee between them. Marcus explained everything, carefully, slowly, not leaving out a single detail. Terrence leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, listening closely. When Marcus finished, his friend shook his head. Rich guys like that. They got backups, Terrence said. No way his system went down without a copy somewhere. Cloud, local server, something. Marcus's mind raced. Could someone delete the footage? He asked. Sure, but not easily. Terrence replied, you'd need admin access, passcodes, or a direct line to the equipment. And usually, there's still a backup, unless someone wanted it gone on purpose. That thought hit Marcus hard. Someone wanted it gone, which meant someone had something to hide. He thought about that moment again. The porch light, the figure inside, the red heel. That person, whoever. She was the key. He went home that afternoon, trying to gather his thoughts. As he stepped into the house, Elijah ran up to him with a drawing. It was messy, with crayons and crooked shapes, but one part stood out. In the corner, he had drawn a house, a car, and 3 stick people. One of them had a red triangle at the bottom shaped like a high heel. What's this, buddy? Marcus asked, kneeling down. Elijah pointed at the red shape and said, that's the lady I saw, remember? She came out the door after you were talking to the sleepy man. Marcus froze. You saw her? He asked, trying not to sound alarmed. Elijah nodded. Yeah. She peeked out when you walked back to the car. I waved, but she went back inside. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. He hadn't imagined it. Someone else had seen her to his own son. That changed everything. He sat Elijah down, gently asked a few more questions, but didn't want to pressure him. Still, what he got confirmed his memory. There was a woman at the house, and she had opened the door. So why was everyone acting like? He abandoned his boss. Why was the footage missing? And why hadn't anyone spoken up about her? Something was being covered up. And Marcus was now in the middle of it. He looked at Elijah and smiled softly, pulling him into a hug. You're a good observer, you know that? He whispered, you might have just helped Daddy a lot, but deep inside. Marcus knew things were about to get much harder, because if someone had gone this far to erase the truth, they wouldn't stop now, and if he wanted justice, he'd have to dig even deeper and risk even more. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He kept hearing Ivy Langston's voice in his head, repeating those words, you saw too much. It wasn't a threat, not really, but it was close. And it told him something important. She had something to hide, but why would she leave her own father outside to freeze? What had happened after Marcus left the mansion that night? He didn't have the answers yet, but he was getting closer. The next morning, he made a decision. He went to the police station, not because he trusted them, but because he wanted to know what they knew. He sat across from Officer Jensen, the same man who called him days ago. Marcus explained everything again. Calmly, clearly, without fear, he told him about the woman at the door. The guest house, Ivy's strange words, even Elijah's memory. But Officer Jensen leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, and said, unless you have actual evidence, there's not much we can do, sir. What about the security footage? Marcus asked. There must be a backup. Jensen shook his head. We requested it. But the Langston family's lawyer said the system was being replaced and the old data was corrupted. Marcus clenched his jaw, trying to stay calm. It was clear the Langstons had money, power, and people protecting them. But Marcus had something they didn't, his memory and the truth. As he walked out of the station, his phone buzzed. It was Terrence. His voice low and urgent. Bro, you need to hear this, he said. I think I found something. Marcus drove to Terrence's place right away, heart pounding inside. Terrence pulled up an old email chain from a security contractor. They didn't delete everything, he said. They forgot to clear the cloud sync, one of the installers kept a test clip on his private server. Marcus leaned in, barely breathing. On the screen was low-resolution security footage, just a short video. No sound, time-stamped on the night of the party. It showed Marcus's car pulling into the driveway, headlights cutting across the lawn. Then it showed Marcus helping Mr. Langston up the steps, pausing at the front door. The door opened, and there she was, V. Langston, in a red dress and high heels. She stepped out, looked directly at Marcus for a second, then stepped aside as her father wobbled inside. Marcus turned and walked back to his car. Seconds later, Ivy stepped out again, now looking angry, her hands waving, her mouth clearly shouting something. Mr. Langston staggered out behind her, arms raised like he was trying to calm her down. Then she shoved him hard. He tripped over the step, fell to the ground, and lay still. The video ended there. Marcus's hands were shaking as he watched it again. He had seen the door open, had felt the presence of someone, but now the truth was undeniable. Ivy Langston had pushed her own father out of the house, and Marcus had been blamed ever since. "Can we download this?" Marcus asked, his voice rough. "I already did," Terrence said, holding up a flash drive. "But listen, if they find out we have this, they'll come hard." "I'm not hiding anymore," Marcus said. "They've already ruined my name." That night, Marcus went home and made another recording, this time with the video playing in the background, explaining every detail of what really happened. He uploaded it privately and sent copies to trusted contacts. Then, he did something bold. Called the company's legal office and asked to schedule a meeting. Surprisingly, they agreed. The next morning, Marcus walked into the building where just days ago people whispered about him like he was a criminal. Now, he walked with confidence, flash drive in his pocket. Truth on his side, the lawyer greeted him with a polite smile. But it was cold, almost fake. "We're still reviewing your case," the man began, but Marcus cut him off. "I have something you need to see," he said, placing the flash drive on the table. "Security footage from the night of the party, the backup your people forgot to erase." The lawyer's face changed, his fake smile fading as he reached for the drive. Ivy pushed her father. Marcus said, not blinking, "After I left." After she opened the door, "I'm not the one who left him outside." "She is." There was silence in the room, long and heavy. The lawyer didn't say much after that. Just nodded and promised someone higher up would review it immediately. Marcus left the building without looking back. He didn't know what would happen next, but the seed had been planted. He had proof now, real evidence, and he had passed it to the right people. Still, he knew it wouldn't be over that easily. People with power don't give it up without a fight. And Marcus had just opened a door they wanted to keep shut. When he got home, Elijah ran into his arms. Laughing, Marcus held him close, eyes closed, heart full. "You okay, Daddy?" the boy asked, looking up at him. "I'm better than yesterday," Marcus whispered, "and tomorrow will be better than today." But deep down, he knew they still weren't safe yet, not until the world saw the truth, and not until the Langstons had no more lies left to hide behind. The next morning, Marcus sat alone at the kitchen table, sipping cold coffee. The sunlight coming through the window didn't feel warm anymore. He kept glancing at his phone, but it didn't ring. No new messages, no calls from HR, no response from Mr. Langston. His son was at school. The house was quiet, but his mind was loud. He couldn't stop thinking about what Elijah said, the lady with the red heel, the door opening, the moment after he turned around. That small memory had become a powerful piece of the puzzle. He didn't know who the woman was, but he was sure. Now she had to be connected to everything that went wrong. Marcus grabbed his keys and left the house, his heart beating faster than usual. He drove again to Mr. Langston's mansion, but this time he didn't stop at the gate. Instead, he parked a block away and walked around the back alleyways until he reached the edge of the property. Tall hedges blocked most of the view, but from a certain angle, he could see the side of the house and, more importantly, a small building near the back. It was a guest house. One he hadn't noticed the first time. It had its own door, small porch, and curtains drawn tightly over the windows. He stood there, watching for several minutes until he saw movement. A slim figure walked past the window, then quickly vanished. Behind the curtain again, someone was in there. He knew it. Marcus went back to his car, his hands slightly shaking. He didn't have proof, not yet, but he had a lead. That guest house might be the key to all of it. Back at home, he called Terrence again and asked for one more favor. "Can you find out if anyone else lives at Mr. Langston's house?" He asked. Maybe someone registered to that address. Utilities? Anything? Terrence said he'd try. And Marcus waited. An hour later, Terrence called back with a low voice, like he was already halfway nervous. "There's someone listed under that property," he said. "A woman named Ivy Langston, about 24. Apparently, the CEO's daughter, Marcus, hadn't even known Mr. Langston had a daughter. She had never been mentioned at work, never shown up to events, never appeared in photos, anything else." Marcus asked, "Just that she's had some legal issues before." Terrence said, "A few sealed records, police visits, but nothing public." Everything swept under that made Marcus feel even more uneasy. A hidden daughter with a hidden record, living quietly in the guest house, possibly the one who opened the door that night. Why would the company say there was no one else present? Why delete the security footage, unless she was the one who caused everything? Marcus decided he needed to talk to her. Not through lawyers, not through the gate speaker, but face to face. That night, he returned again, waited until the street was quiet and the lights in the main house were off. Then he walked up the long side path toward the guest house. Heart pounding in his chest, he knocked. Gently at first, then again, no answer. He was about to walk away when the door cracked open, just a few inches. A young woman with sharp eyes and messy dark hair looked out, her face half in shadow. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "I know," Marcus replied. "But I need to ask you something." "I'm not talking to anyone," she said, starting to close the door. Marcus stepped forward, but didn't touch the door. "I just want to know what happened that night," he said. "I dropped your father at the door. I saw someone open it. I think it was you." Her eyes locked onto his for a moment, and something changed in her face. "You saw too much," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Then she closed the door all the way. He stood there, frozen. Her words didn't deny it. They didn't explain anything either, but they confirmed something was being hidden. The next morning, Marcus received an official email from the company. He was being investigated for potential misconduct involving the safety of an executive. No details, no explanation, just a formal message that left his stomach turning. At the end of the message was a line that made his blood run cold. "You are advised not to speak to other employees, clients, or members of the Langston family until the matter is resolved." So now they were trying to silence him, even without proof of wrongdoing. They were putting pressure on him, isolating him, trying to make him disappear quietly. Marcus paced his small living room, the walls feeling tighter than ever. He couldn't let them erase the truth. He picked up his phone and opened the voice recorder. He began speaking, slowly, clearly, recording his own version of what happened from the night of the party to now. Every detail, every memory, including the moment Elijah mentioned the woman and the strange meeting at the guest house. He saved the file and sent it to Terrence, asking him to keep it safe. If something happened to Marcus, at least someone would know the story that night. He tucked Elijah into bed and sat beside him for a long time, watching his little chest rise and fall with each breath. "I'm gonna fix this," Marcus whispered. "I'm not letting anyone take away our peace." But deep inside, he knew it was going to get worse before it got better, because people who hide the truth usually fight hard to keep it buried. And now Marcus wasn't just standing in the way, He was digging it up. The next morning started quiet. Too quiet. Marcus sat on the couch with Elijah, watching cartoons and pretending everything was normal, but his mind was far from the television screen. He kept checking his phone, waiting for something in email. A call, a warning, anything. By noon, it came. A single message from the company's legal team. Short and cold. We have reviewed the footage. Further discussions will be scheduled soon. Please remain available. No apology, no admission of error. Just a formal wall of words. Marcus read it twice, then tossed the phone aside. They knew. Now? The footage showed everything. Still, they weren't saying it out loud. He could feel them calculating behind the scenes, figuring out how to protect the company's image, not how to make things right. He stepped outside to breathe. The air sharp and cold. That's when he saw something strange. A sleek black car parked across the street. It hadn't been there earlier, and now it sat quietly. Engine off, windows tinted. Inside, he could barely make out a figure in the driver's seat. Not moving, not looking around, just watching. Marcus didn't panic, but he didn't like it either. He went back inside, locked the door, and pulled the curtains. Whoever they were, they wanted him to feel watched, but he wouldn't be scared. Not now, not after how far he'd come. Later. That afternoon, Terrence called again, his voice more serious than usual. "Man, you've stirred something," he said. "People are talking." Someone leaked the video to a news blogger. Marcus's eyes widened. "What?" "Yeah, it's online now. Not the full clip, but just enough," Terrence said. "It's going viral." Marcus rushed to his computer, opened the blog site, and there it was. A short video showing Ivy Langston shoving her father off the porch. Time-stamped, clear, undeniable. Below it, the headline read, "Exclusive CEO's daughter caught on camera injured father." Employee blamed. Marcus sat back in the chair, breath caught in his throat. It was out now. The truth was no longer hidden, no longer in the hands of lawyers or company PR teams. People were seeing it, judging it, reacting to it, and within hours, everything changed. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Journalists called, asking for statements. Neighbors sent messages of support. Strangers online shared his story with hashtags like #JusticeForMarcus and #TruthMatters. But not everyone was happy that night. Someone threw a rock through his front window. It came flying in during dinner, shattering glass across the table. Elijah screamed, diving into his father's arms. Marcus pulled him close and got him to safety. Heart racing, he called the police, and they came quickly. But like always, they left with more questions than answers. No witnesses, the officer said. Could be random, but Marcus knew it wasn't random. It was a message someone wanted him quiet. After the police left, Marcus sat in the living room, holding Elijah close, watching the wind blow through the broken glass. "I'm sorry this happened, buddy," he whispered. Elijah looked up, his voice small. "It's not your fault, Daddy. You told the truth." Those words gave Marcus strength. The next day, everything exploded. The company released a public statement, cold, careful, full of legal words. They announced Ivy Langston had been suspended from all company-related privileges. They said Marcus had been unfairly treated and would be reinstated with full pay and public recognition. But Marcus didn't feel like celebrating. He wasn't interested in money or titles anymore. He wanted peace, safety, and justice. A few hours later, something unexpected happened. Mr. Langston himself called. His voice was rough, quiet, but steady. "Marcus," he said, "I just saw the footage, and I didn't know." There was a long pause, filled with things unsaid. "I owe you more than an apology," Mr. Langston continued. "You saved my life that night, and I treated you like dirt. I'm sorry, Marcus." Didn't know what to say at first. The man who had nearly destroyed him was now thanking him. "I didn't do it for you," Marcus said finally. I did it because it was the right thing. I understand, Mr. Langston replied. And that's exactly why I'm offering you something better. But Marcus stopped him right there. I don't want promotions. I don't want a spotlight, he said. Just leave me and my son alone. Let us live in peace, Mr. Langston. Agreed quietly, and the call ended. That night, Marcus sat beside Elijah's bed. Holding his little hand as the boy slept, the danger wasn't completely gone. But the worst of it had passed. The truth had come out. And no one could take that away now. But Marcus still had one more thing to do. Something no one asked for. Something he owed only to himself, and he knew where he had to go, to the guest house, one last time. Marcus returned to the Langston estate just after sunset. The sky was a deep orange, fading into purple. The kind of color that made you feel both calm and heavy inside. He parked down the street again, walked the same quiet path through the alley, and approached the guest house with careful steps. His hands were in his coat pockets. But they were shaking slightly. Not from fear. He wasn't afraid of Ivy Langston anymore, but from the weight of everything that had happened. He knocked on the door once, then twice. No answer. He waited, looking up at the small window where he had seen her last time. Then the door creaked open slowly, and Ivy stood there. Not hiding this time. She looked tired. Her eyes red like she hadn't slept. Her hair was messy. And she wore a thick sweater and slippers, nothing like the red dress from that night. I figured you'd come, she said softly, stepping aside. Marcus walked in, closing the door behind him. The inside was small and quiet, the air filled with the scent of tea and something burning slightly in the kitchen. He didn't sit, didn't make himself comfortable. I'm not here to fight, he said calmly. I just want to know why. Ivy looked down at the floor, silent for a long time. I didn't mean for him to get hurt, she said finally. I was angry. We fought, and I pushed him. I didn't think he'd fall. You saw me leave, Marcus said, his voice low but steady. You knew I didn't do anything wrong, and still, you let me get blamed. Ivy nodded, her lips trembling. I panicked, she whispered. I thought if the truth came out, I'd be finished. And my dad would never forgive me. I never expected him to end up outside like that. I thought he'd get up. Marcus looked at her, not with hate, but with the tired weight of someone who had been through too much to waste energy on anger. I have a son, he said. Do you know what it felt like? Almost losing everything, just because you wanted to protect your name? She didn't answer. She couldn't. He stepped closer, just enough for her to hear the tremble in his voice. You broke a man's life for a few days of silence, he said, and you didn't say a word, not until the truth leaked online. Tears filled her eyes now, but Marcus didn't comfort her. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, just stood there as a man who had already survived the damage. No, Ivy said through her tears. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I didn't know what else to do. Marcus nodded slowly, then turned to leave. At the door, he paused. Tell the truth, he said. Not to me, not to the company, tell it to yourself. Then he stepped outside, closing the door behind him without another word. The walk back to his car felt lighter, like he'd left something heavy behind. He didn't need her apology, he didn't need her punishment. What he needed was already the truth. His name and his peace. When Marcus got home, Elijah was already asleep, curled up with his blanket like nothing bad had ever touched their lives. Marcus sat on the edge of the bed, brushing hair from his son's forehead. I did it, little man, he whispered. We made it through. That night, the house was quiet. But for the first time in days, it didn't feel like silence filled with fear. It felt like rest, real rest. The next morning, Marcus received one final email. This time from the company's CEO himself. It was short but sincere. The company offered a formal public apology. and an invitation for Marcus to return, not just to his old job, but to a new position in community relations, working on fairness and workplace justice. He stared at the message for a long time, then closed the laptop. He didn't answer right away. He didn't have to. He stepped outside into the sunlight, breathing deeply. A neighbor waved from across the street. Another one nodded with quiet respect. People saw him differently now, not just as a worker or a name on a report, but as someone who stood up when he was being buried. Later that day, Elijah ran into the living room holding a flyer from school. "Daddy," he said, "they want parents to come talk about bravery and honesty." Marcus smiled and nodded slowly. "Think I got a story for that," he said with a wink, because the truth had nearly drowned him, but now it had become his strength. And as the world moved on, Marcus and his son were finally free to walk forward, heads high, names clear, and the man who once walked out of a party doing the right thing. He had become something more, proof that truth, no matter how hidden, always finds its way to light. A few weeks passed, and the noise around Marcus's name began to fade. The blogs stopped writing, the reporters stopped calling, and the internet moved on to something else. But in his small home, the peace was just beginning. Marcus now spent his mornings walking Elijah to school, hand in hand, chatting about dinosaurs and space and things only a 9-year-old could care about. They laughed more, smiled more, and slept better. The shadow that had followed them for days had lifted. But Marcus had changed, not just in the eyes of others, but inside himself. He wasn't the quiet man in the corner anymore, the one who avoided trouble just to keep the peace. He had seen what silence cost. And now he spoke when something was wrong, even if his voice shook. One afternoon, he stood at Elijah's school, speaking to a classroom full of children and their parents. He didn't wear a suit or hold notes. He just stood there, honest and real, and said, "Sometimes doing the right thing feels like the worst thing." The room went quiet. "But even if the world turns against you," he continued, "if you hold on to truth, it becomes your shield." Elijah beamed from the front row, his small hands clapping first when his father finished speaking. Later that night, Marcus received another letter, not an email, but a handwritten one. Delivered by mail, it was from Mr. Langston, and this time, it wasn't formal or polished. It was human. He wrote about waking up in the hospital and hearing that Marcus had been blamed. He wrote about how, for the first time, he saw the walls money had built around his own family, and how those same walls had kept him blind to the truth. At the bottom of the letter, he had written, "You gave me more than a ride that night. You gave me a second chance, and I didn't see it until it was almost too late." Marcus folded the letter slowly, placing it in the drawer with other important things: his son's birth certificate, family photos, the drawing Elijah made of the woman in red heels. He didn't hate Mr. Langston anymore. Not really. People make mistakes, but some mistakes come with consequences. And it wasn't Marcus's job to punish him. His job was to protect his son, protect his truth, and now help protect others who might not have a voice. He eventually accepted the company's new offer, but only under one condition: he would lead a program that focused on fairness in the workplace, especially for those whose voices were often ignored. He didn't want a title or a fancy office, just the power to change something real. And they gave it to him. It felt strange, walking back into the same building where people once whispered behind his back. Now those same people looked him in the eye, some with guilt, others with quiet respect. He didn't need an apology from all of them. He just needed them to see him not as the man who drove the boss home, but as the man who stood his ground when everything was against him. At home, life returned to normal, but better than before. One evening, Elijah sat beside Marcus on the porch, watching the stars blink into view. "Daddy," he asked, "do you think telling the truth always works?" Marcus smiled, thought for a moment, then replied, not always right away. Son, sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it hurts first. He looked up at the sky, where a single bright star shined brighter than the rest. But the truth never dies. It just waits for someone brave enough to carry it. Elijah leaned his head against his father's arm and whispered, "Then I want to be brave too." And in that small, quiet moment, Marcus knew everything had been worth it. The fear, the silence, the pain. Even the broken window, all of it, had led to this peace. To this bond, stronger than before. Because he hadn't just cleared his name. He had shown his son what it meant to stand tall, not with fists or shouting, but with courage and truth. And no matter what came next, Marcus was ready. Because once you survive a storm like that, the wind doesn't scare you anymore.